Starting at 8 Eastern. That's Nightly News for this Thursday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
Record-breaking heat like never seen before here in the Pacific Northwest. Now, dozens of people are dead, many of them alone in their homes, without air conditioning or even a fan. So how did we let this happen? What should we have done differently? And how should we prepare now for the possibility of another extreme heat wave? Here's the story.
And thank you for being with us. I'm Dan Haggerty. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. I do want to hear what you're thinking tonight, what you're feeling tonight. So please email us at thestory@kgw.com. Use that hashtag HeyDan on Twitter, and let's get right into it. The big story tonight is one that I really need you to pay attention to. A tragedy. There's no other way to phrase it, a tragedy that I don't think is really being fully felt yet, because I'm not seeing the outrage online. I'm not seeing the activists or the politicians demanding a platform and a microphone to fight for change. I'm not seeing vigils. I'm not seeing marches. I'm not seeing anything. So I just want to make sure that everybody fully understands what's going on here. 79 people are dead in Oregon because we could not save them from the heat. 79 people, and that number is expected to go up. It's expected to rise. Imagine for just a minute that it was a fire that killed 79 people, or an ice storm that froze 79 people to death, or a plane that went down at PDX with 79 souls on board. We'd have politicians surveying the damage. We'd have national news reporting live from downtown. But tonight, the latest tweet from Mayor Wheeler is about a billboard. Granted, it's a great billboard. It's about rising up against hate, but it's not what I expected at the top of his feed, considering these facts, considering that 79 people are now dead in the state. Average age, 66 years old. Most of these people dying alone in their homes and in their apartments with no air conditioning and no fan. Pat Doris talked to a local doctor who actually went door to door last weekend checking on vulnerable people.
Does it surprise you to hear about all the deaths from the heat wave?
It doesn't surprise me, but it's very saddening because I think it's preventable. It's not like the natural disaster happens and then you're cleaning up afterwards. It's like we know it's coming and there's things that we can do to help.
So what could we have done? What should we have done differently? How will we handle this next time? And climate scientists assure us there will be a next time. And we ask those questions to all of our local elected leaders. The only city commissioner to go in front of a camera for us was rookie lawmaker Dan Ryan.
I look forward to analyzing our city's response and seeing what, if anything, can be done differently in the future. I will say that as a lifelong Portlander, we've never been here before. We have responses for winter conditions in ways that we don't have for temperatures of 115. It's an oven. And I know that all of us were doing the best we could. I know I personally went to the cooling stations, showed up and was responsive to what needed to be done to be helpful. And I think a lot of Portlanders were leaning into that. But I will tell you that it's grim, it's sad. And we need to be reflective and honest about what we can learn from what happened and how we will do much better in the future, because the climate crisis is here and we're going to be facing these conditions in the future.
Now, we really wanted to hear from Mayor Wheeler since he's the mayor. Yesterday, when the news broke, he wrote on Twitter, "My heart goes out to the loved ones of the 63 Oregonians and 45 Multnomah County residents." Of course, as we said off the top, those numbers have now grown since this tweet was sent out. He goes on to say, "who lost their lives as a result of the recent heat wave. I want to thank the first responders and medical workers who worked tirelessly through the heat to save as many lives as possible." But we really wanted him to address our questions. So we emailed him this morning and asked, what should we have done differently as a community? How will we handle this next time? And they wrote back to us saying, "My heart goes out to the loved ones of the 63. The same exact statement, the same words Nothing different. Didn't come anywhere close to addressing our questions, and kind of insinuates that we don't use Twitter. #HeyDan. We also asked for an on-camera interview and got no response. Hours later, though, he and the rest of the commissioners signed their names to a group response that went out at 5 o'clock today, saying, in part, we are seeking more information from our partners at Multnomah County to learn more about how these deaths could have been prevented so that we might prevent them in the future. We are working with our bureaus to identify how we can better support Portlanders in extreme heat emergencies, just as last year's council developed new systems for extreme smoke and quarantine, and just as we have protocols for snow and ice. We reached out to some people with Metro as well, and Councilor Christine Lewis and I had a conversation, and she said something that really stuck out to me.
People have access to different levels of resource to weather a heat wave, and the folks who perished, who lost their lives, were those that had access to none or the fewest.
Okay. Wow. Think about it. How devastating. When a tornado, for instance, spins through a neighborhood, it does so indiscriminately. I mean, that's how natural disasters typically work. That's why they're so scary, because no matter how prepared you are for, say, a wildfire, it can still take everything from anyone. But in this heat wave, if you had reliable air conditioning, it wasn't much more than boring because you were stuck inside. If you had transportation to one of the cooling centers, it was inconvenient. But for people who suffer from social inequality, this was their own personal wildfire, their own personal tsunami, their own devastating natural disaster, while most of us rode it out on Netflix. And I know here I am on my pedestal again. I'm not placing blame. I'm really not. I was one of those people sitting in the AC, keeping my kids occupied, while my wife did go out and report on the heat on Sunday, but I was at home. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to talk about this, that we can't step up and talk about this. One of the only people to mention an actual tangible, hold it in your hands kind of solution was Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury.
I think there's always more that needs to be done on so many levels, from having climate safety conditions. I mean, we need to have legislation at the federal level. We need to have really a focus on stopping climate change. And then at the local level, we know that we need to help people who, in Portland, a lot of people don't have air conditioning. So we need to help people who are struggling and vulnerable to get access to life-saving services.
Let's focus for a minute on the air conditioning point. In a 2019 survey by the Census Bureau, 22% of people in Portland say they did not have air conditioning, no AC. That's a lot of people. That works out to be 140,000 people across the city. And in this heat wave, with temperatures over 110 degrees, fans and open windows, it wasn't enough. It didn't cut it. You needed an AC to be at least comfortable. And for older people or people in poor health, it was vital. Another problem. A bunch of Multnomah County's libraries are still closed right now. The county did open 5 of its 19 libraries as cooling centers, but only during the day. They did have 3 24-hour cooling centers at the Convention Center, the Arbor Lodge Shelter, and the Sunrise Center. And the Director of Emergency Management called those extraordinary steps because it was something they have actually never done before.
We took some pretty extraordinary steps, and and in retrospect now, certainly it was the risk that caused us to do that. But I think many of us are glad that we leaned as far forward as we could, and as we did.
Right, but 45 people died. So do you think you could have done more?
For those 45 folks, I think there's always that question in the back of our head. I think one of the key components there is, when you have this, and we'll have to sort of look at some of the specifics, were they people that we did reach out to? Were they people that maybe it was hard to get them out of their homes? Maybe we didn't have that connection with them.
Again, those 45 people in Multnomah County are now 52 people. 79 total in the state, people who never made it to a cooling center. Why, right? They're asking those questions, which is good. Maybe because a bunch of public transit shut down in the heat. TriMet shut down all MAX lines on Sunday. And the Portland streetcar also shut down because the power cables were literally melting. And we told everybody about that on the news, but what if you missed it? What if you didn't watch that show? We had it online, but what if you don't have a computer? Well, we sent out push alerts, but what if you don't have a cell phone? Well, there's always 211, which we learned today wasn't even available statewide until Sunday afternoon, when temps had already reached record levels. Here's Kristen Severance.
Let's talk about what happened with 211. 211 is a nonprofit that works to connect people with health and social services, a likely number to call when people are looking for information about cooling centers. 211 is normally open statewide Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. You would think with a historic heat wave hitting the state, 211 would have expanded their hours. Multnomah County tweeted this at noon on Sunday, quote, "We're learning of issues with 211 from people who need rides to cooling centers. We're working on a solution to forward calls to Multnomah County."
Probably the worst time is during this historic heat wave. People can't call to get information. Are you looking into what happened there?
The minute that we heard that 211 people weren't getting through on their calls, I redirected all those calls to Multnomah County's crisis line. So while there was a short time that 211 was down, we quickly pivoted.
But Kara Kingus, director of partnerships with 211, said 211 wasn't down. It was closed statewide until Sunday.
So unfortunately, we don't have 24/7 for all of our programs. The core 211 program, just for general information statewide, is Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Some folks also thought that our text messaging and email were available, but those are also only Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then Sunday, by about 2 o'clock, we were open statewide.
211 could have gone statewide at any time with approval from the Oregon Department of Human Services, but that conversation did not happen until Sunday afternoon. I'm Kristen Severance, KGW News.
Now, when I first saw these numbers about how many people died in this heat, the first thing I thought, or the first thing I assumed, I guess, was that a lot of them would be homeless. And I wondered how many were living in the streets. And I thought probably a lot of you would have a similar question. So we asked the county, and here's what they told us. The overwhelming majority of people died in their homes. But at this stage, we are not able to release the exact number of homeless because of missing information and because establishing homelessness takes a really intensive death investigation follow-up to determine. They also said it can take a while to determine if someone who died outside was actually homeless or just collapsed while outside of their home. But from this statement, it appears most of these reported deaths happened inside of a house, inside of an apartment, inside of someone's home, not on the street. We did check with the Joint Office of Homeless Services to see what they did to help people without a home.
And then a week and a half before this most recent forecast, we started tripling our water orders because we knew we were going to have to get outreach teams with a lot of supplies to get out to people. They're not always going to get to cooling centers. People don't always make that choice. It's hard to leave your stuff behind. We see this in the winter, same way. That's why we bring sleeping bags and blankets and tarps and coats and all that out to people. So we knew we had to bring water, cooling towels, things like that. So we ramped that up.
So again, we don't know exactly how many people were homeless who died in this heat wave, but of course we will keep checking. And on that note, amid all of this chaos with the heat, the city did take some action surrounding homeless camps. Will it make a difference? Here's Maggie Vespa.
Portland has been under a housing emergency for close to 6 years. Many believe there are more tents on our streets than ever. Much of the blame lobbed at city officials who largely stopped clearing camps during the pandemic, a practice which is slowly ramping back up.
And we are in the process of reshaping the way we respond to the homeless crisis in this community.
Wednesday, the city council voted to amend city code and speed up that process even more.
These changes from a still partially boarded up Portland City Hall are kind of twofold. They're supposed to lend clarity to which camps the city plans to clear
and where the people in those camps are supposed to go. Among other things, the changes cut through bureaucratic red tape, letting crews clear camps on land owned by any city bureau without checking with that bureau first. Commissioners also gave the go-ahead to build 6 villages throughout the city where people can camp legally. This means people cleared from campsites can go to these villages and set up their tents. Commissioners don't yet know where those villages will be.
All the bureaus were asked to provide parcels. I would say the public will have better information about that in August.
Housing Commissioner Dan Ryan said Thursday the construction of these villages will be covered by federal COVID relief money. They should be open by the end of the year.
And this is unprecedented to go this fast. So I realize that, and I'm challenging myself and the entire city to make sure that it's all hands on deck.
I really do want to believe this, but at this point, based on actions that we've had in the last year, it's just words to me.
Stacey Gibson owns multiple Subway franchises, including this one downtown. She says Portland's housing crisis is crippling the city's business community, and she's over hearing promises to tackle the problem.
We still have a lot of issues with theft. The homelessness, the abuse on the staff when they're coming in and demanding bathrooms or just stealing soda.
Adding to the pessimism, commissioners also voted Wednesday to deprioritize clearing low-impact camps. That means camps that are more than 150 feet from pre- or elementary schools, more than 100 feet from high schools, more than 50 feet from parks, and more than 10 feet from the entrances to businesses or residential structures. Ryan said he feels for business owners like Gibson, but he calls homelessness a humanitarian crisis.
I really want to get away from the false binary between the sweep or not to sweep. Instead, we needed clear direction on how we regulate that and also on how we build.
That said, calls for some camps to be cleared are tough to ignore. Case in point, Laurelhurst Park. KGW began covering the Southeast Portland camp back in November. In the months since, dozens there have refused to leave, and activists argue forcing them would be inhumane. But neighbors are terrified. They report harassment, theft, even fires. Commissioner Ryan said this new code change will make it easier to clear this camp, but he wouldn't say when that might happen. And KGW went back Thursday only to find Laurelhurst looks the same. We asked people there if they'd be likely to leave and head to the city's safe sleep villages.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's probably not a complete answer to the problem. I mean, I think more like permanent housing would probably be a better thing to shoot for, but I guess for the time being, maybe that's a good option.
The changes to Portland City Code take effect immediately. Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
Now that Oregon and Washington are fully back open, I know a lot of you have questions like, do I still need to wear a mask anywhere? We've got some answers for you when the story continues.
Welcome back. I always go through your questions and comments during the commercial breaks. We got a lot of them tonight. I'm going to address a few at the end of the show, so keep them coming with the hashtag #HeyDan. And I want to remind everybody about our Hey Help campaign. We've been getting so much support through this, and I want to thank everybody. This week, we're asking you to consider a donation to Blanchet House. They help people living on the streets of Portland. And to donate, you just open the camera on your phone, point it at the QR code on your screen, or you can go to kgw.com/HeyHelp and donate to the wonderful work they do there. They did some incredible work in the last few days, of course, saving lives. I mean, handing out water and ice during this historic heat wave to our homeless population. And we spoke with Blanchet House's executive director about that.
Well, we're fortunate now that we have 15 months of experience of responding to these imminent crises in our community during the pandemic. So in advance of the heat wave, we were already putting out the call to our community that we were going to need a lot of water bottles and reusable water bottles. Wanted to make sure that we had lightweight clothing and hats and other items to hand out. Wanted to make sure that we could prepare a menu that would be more suitable to the weather, cold foods, foods rich in water and hydration, certain fruits and vegetables. So all of that preparation went into it. And then, how do you prepare for 110 degrees, right? I mean, I think we recognized pretty quickly that the weather was going to be such that people would not even have the stamina to maybe make it 1 or 2 blocks to receive food and hydration from our location. So we went mobile with our water and drove around Old Town and walked around the neighborhood with water. And what was really great to see was we weren't the only ones. There were other agencies doing the same thing, and then just private individuals just filling up igloo containers with water and ice and just walking around the neighborhood. So that was, these are crisis situations that are life-threatening for the people we serve. There are also opportunities to really see the immense level of generosity and selflessness in our community. And that's what's really sustained us these past 15 months.
Blanchet House also offers free meals in downtown Portland, and they even have some recovery programs, peer support for people wishing to pursue a sober life and get their life back together. So again, here is that QR code. We're calling this a micro donation drive. You don't have to give a big amount of money. No matter what you give, it will help. Thank you. All right, let's count some vaccines. We're still doing that. Yes, why not? More than 2.48 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC. That works out to be 58.8% of our total population. We're not just counting adults anymore. We're going to count everybody. So that includes kids and adults and everybody. Even if you're under the age of 12 and up is eligible, we're counting the whole state. We wanted to give you an idea how much of the state is vaccinated. It's 58.8%. In Washington, more than 4.67 million people have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC. That works to be 61.4% of Washington's entire population. Now, I know a lot of you still have questions about reopening amidst everything else that did happen yesterday. So please keep bringing those questions to us. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. We sent a few of them to our little expert, Pat Doris, to answer them.
We have some really good questions tonight, so let's dive into them. Christy wants to know, are some businesses still keeping mask policies? And if they are, is there somewhere to go see who is? Sorry, Christy, great question, but the answer is I don't know. I've not heard of anybody continuing the mask policy, but every individual business does have the choice to do that. So I think the best way you're going to find out is when you go to your favorite small shop or grocery store. We do know the big grocers are dropping the mask mandate. So Freddy's, Safeway, Albertsons, New Seasons, Whole Foods, I think as well. But we don't have an exhaustive list of that. So that's what I know about that. Michael wants to know, are masks finally going to be stopped being required at schools? Don't know. And the reason why is because that decision is going to be made probably in the early fall before school gets going, and it will be a district by district and maybe even school by school decision on that. So there's still going to be some COVID protocols for that, but it's unclear exactly what they are yet. So stay tuned. It's a great question though. Also, Lorna wants to know, in healthcare, no mask mandates lifted yet. And you're probably not going to see the mask mandates lifted for some time in healthcare because, well, that's where the sick people go and that's where the unhealthy germs are circulating. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's quite a while before the mask mandates are lifted for healthcare. And of course, they're still required on public transportation and in airports, places like that. Thanks for the question, gang. Keep them coming. Love them.
Thanks to Pat, and thanks to you for sending in these questions. I'm going to address a few as we finish the show next. Keep them coming. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. I'll see you after the break. Got a lot of emails tonight, a lot of people passionate about this issue, and I'm glad. That was the point of tonight's show, to get people to feel something about what this community is experiencing. But one stood out from John. He said, I don't think that you or the public have any idea of all of the effort that went into this heat emergency from professionals and hundreds of volunteers. In general, it is difficult to get people to pay attention to a threat that they have never experienced before. I think this was a cheap shot on your part at the expense of all the helpers. I'm not blaming anybody for what happened. I'm certainly not blaming volunteers. And I know we focus on politicians because they take the job of being in front of these sorts of things. They take the job of making these decisions. So, of course, we are going to ask them what they plan to do moving forward, what they wish they would have been able to do differently. I'm not implying that Mayor Wheeler should have gone to every door in the city of Portland and knocked on it. I'm not implying that. But people need to pay attention to this moving forward. I'll tell you this, all of those people who died had neighbors, every one of them. And next time I see weather like this in the forecast, I'm going to go to my neighbor and make sure they have my cell phone number. And when it's hot, I'm going to knock on their door and make sure they don't need anything, make sure they're feeling okay. That's the story for tonight. Thanks for being with us. I'll see you tomorrow.